Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing a bit of a like a response video to a video which was originally made by Dave at The Dark Stuff. So I'd seen, well, it was through James Griffiths, James Griffiths' response to that, who I seen as doing a kind of 23 sort of part series on this. Now I've not got that level of commitment to this, I have to say. So I'm going to be following Dave's original format for this, so which essentially it's about your musical DNA, is the idea of the video. So essentially sort of bands and artists you got into during your kind of your formative years. I think Dave kind of says that up until you're sort of 23, 24 years old. Now I'm 25, so I thought this is actually quite a good time to actually do this video, in a way everything I've kind of got into and discovered up to this point, will I guess inform almost everything I'm going to get into and discover as the years go on. So the idea with this video is to kind of do 23 pairs of either albums or kind of songs, so I'm doing it songs, but then I'm pairing them by artists. So I've got I think 40 46 songs if my maths is right, and then 23 artists I'm going to be talking about. So these are kind of artists who are seminal artists for me, ones who've made a big impression on my kind of my formative years. I very much kind of shaped my music taste, there's a lot of variety in this video, and I'm gonna go basically chronologically right from when I was very young, in primary school, right up to maybe a year or two ago. Okay, so we'll just get started with my first band and my first pair of songs, which is ABBA. So I think I've told the story quite a few times on my channel. I was a massive ABBA fan when I was in primary school. They were the first band I got into, when everyone else was into really modern stuff. ABBA was my thing. And I don't know how I got into them. I mean, my mum's a fan, but not a massive fan. I mean, she had some CDs like this one and a few their records. But I think what drew me in, was just the bright melodies and kind of the perfect production, as well. The songs they just sound amazing, and they still do. Even though I would say even then I would say that I tended to prefer their more slightly complex songs. So things the two I've picked are The Name of the Game, which is a kind of multi-section kind of song, and then SOS, which is a really widely respected song. People as diverse as Pete Townsend and Ian McCulloch really rate that song and say it is one of the best pop songs of all time, which it absolutely is. So ABBA would be my first pick, my first band that I got into. And then maybe a few years later, after realising that ABBA were maybe not the coolest thing going, I then discovered the Beatles, mostly through my dad, who was again a bit like my mum. He's not a massive Beatles fan, but he had some of their albums, and then I think I maybe just heard heard them through him. So the two I remember remember from that time are the Red and the Blue albums here. These are his old copies of them, and again I think it was just the quality songs, and I think just the kind of the variety in their discography. No two Beatles songs really sound the same. So the two that I'm going for would be from the later period. I would choose Penny Lane. I think is a good example of what appealed to me with Paul McCartney as a songwriter. Very melodic, very bright, kind of rooted reality as well. And for John Lennon, I would go for a slightly early one, so In My Life, which again is just a really touching, very tender song, and really appealed to me, and that wanted me to delve into the Beatles a bit more. So that's my second pair. And then for quite a few years after discovering the Beatles, then came Simon and Garfunkel, which was through my granddad. So he was again a fan of Simon and Garfunkel, but not a massive fan. He had a few of their albums, and the song that I always remember remember him introducing me to was Homeward Bound. I remember like we were going through Widnes train station like at like the time, like, and like he kind of pointed out that this was where like Paul Simon like had like wrote like this song, which I then went to listen to, and I was like, wow, this is really good. You know, just again, it's kind of got like this like again, it's got this kind of happy sad kind of feel to it, like, which is something like what James Griffiths talks a bit about like in his video, like on like various other videos. This kind of like this kind of like this paradox like at like the edge of like where it's happy, but there's also like a slight feeling like of like melancholy like to it as well. That's what kind of you get with a lot of Paul Simon songs. So like, yeah, I choose Homeward Bound, and the other one I choose is America, which again always really appealed in terms of its storytelling and like its like imagery, you know, like of like this young couple like on like this road trip trying to find themselves like, and like find like their nation like as well. So so yeah, Paul Simon like always appealed, and like yeah, would be my third pair. Another band I got into around that same kind of time was Pink Floyd, who I don't say soured on a little bit, but I'm not a massive fan. But again, they made a good impression and definitely introduced me more to kind of more proggy sort of sounds, or kind of like music what isn't just a kind of like a 2-minute pop song, like 2 or 3 minute song. You know, these albums and like their albums are epic kind of like sort of like pieces that you really have to listen to like all the way through. And yeah, for me, like the tracks I would pick are both from Dark Side Off the Moon here. Again, this is my dad's old copy of it, and I go with Time and Us and Them. Probably two of Pink Floyd's more accessible songs, like I would say, which maybe isn't too unsurprising like for me to be picking them, but they are great songs, and this is a brilliant album, and like as well, like no doubt about it, and like again, like was quite a formative one for me. Another band which, again, I was big into at like the time, and probably when I was starting my vinyl collection, they were one of the first bands that first bands I actually got complete on, but maybe soured on them like a little bit, but they're still great though, still great fun. So ELO here, again, a real family favourite, like growing up, like ELO. Again, the music's just fun, you know, they've got a lot of like very memorable hooks in there, and again, the production is a bit like ABBA, the production's just perfect, like on like a lot of like their songs. So the tracks I'd pick would be Turn to Stone and Telephone Line. Like again, I've got fond memories like of both of those songs, like kind of like family road trips, like with like a CD. I think it's like long lost now, but like yeah, like ELO's hits, you can't really go wrong, and those would be the two that I'd pick. Again, another band which I got in through my parents, which probably have endured a little bit more than some of like those other ones, like they're like ELO, like and Pink Floyd, for me is 10cc. So like I do remember, like again, like kind of like this actual CD, like from like kind of like music, like from like road trips and like whatnot, and again just being quite intrigued with them, you know, because the songs there's a lot of variety like with like 10cc, you know, in terms of like vocalists, like, you know, as well as kind of like their musical style. They're just a very like inventive band, a little bit weird, a little bit wacky, and they've kind of all the songs have got this kind of slight quirkiness to them, whether it be through like Lol Crem's vocal delivery or some of like the kind of like the melodic journeys that some of like their songs like go on. So yeah, the tracks I pick would be like Life is a Minestrone. Again, just the fact it is slightly wacky, is there's a bit off the wall like lyrically, and also The Dean and I, again just for like the melodic twists and turns like that it takes you on. Okay, so next up was one I actually got from my parents, and it's the Squeeze Singles compilation here. I think they were having a clear out, and again they just sort of like gave this to me. They thought I might quite like it, so I said, by this point, like already big into like the Beatles, like so they gave me this like a mixed bag of other ones, like include a few Smiths, including like a Smiths compilation and I think an REM one like as well. But this is probably the one like at the time that made the biggest impression on me. It really takes me back to like a very specific like summer holiday like we had like away like in Spain, and songs like Take Me I'm Yours and Pulling Muscles from the Shell, like all the two that I'm picking, always just remind me like of like that summer, and like always just have a very kind of like upbeat like feeling like for like me, so yeah, I guess Squeeze is like a great band, and I would say it's part of my musical DNA. Okay, that's probably the first one I got into kind of by myself, so like without any sort of like my parents like either giving me something or like hearing something like through them, and it was this and it's the Kinks. So again, I think I must have picked this one up like again like so like fairly like early on, like in like my kind of like maybe when I was now maybe say about 12 or 13 now, like I think, and again I think what struck me with these was like the kind of like the quality songwriting and that kind of like the observational style like that like Ray Davies like writes in like really like appealed to me, and the fact that he'd often write about very mundane things. So like the tracks I'm going for like is Dead End Street, which is a very much a song like about like sort of like social deprivation and kind of like sort of like poor housing conditions like and like whatnot, the kind of like kind of like the poverty-stricken slums like off like the time. And then I would also choose the kind of very slightly more sentimental nature of like Waterloo Sunset, which has just always been like a real favourite like song of mine there. And again, like a great one here, like which kind of broadened me out to maybe cite to maybe like other 60s bands like off like the time, such as The Who and the Rolling Stones. Next up was a discovery actually through Top of the Pops. Like I used to, like when like I was still living at home, like I would watch like the BBC 4 reruns like off it like with like my mum like a fair bit, and again like a real like mainstay like off like Top of the Pops like in like the late 70s that was The Jam. So again I think very quickly I got this like this compilation of theirs like about the Young Idea, and then just very much fell into the whole kind of like the Paul Weller like rabbit hole, getting into like the Jam like and getting into like the like the Jam and like the Style Council and like all his like solo stuff like as well. I guess the tracks which I remember like having like the biggest impact would probably be like the Eton Rifles and Going Underground, which again I think it was this kind of mix of kind of music like and like politics like on there, like you can like sort of like you can make a point like in like a song like but not sort of like not quite like alienate people either, like you know you kind of do it like and like write a really great song which like everyone seems to love, but you can almost kind of miss like the message. Like that's what I kind of like quite like about sort of like Paul Weller's writing and like those two songs like specifically. Next up now, I'd say I'm probably now about 16 years old now, and I remember really vividly we were driving down to Manchester like in like our family car, and my parents at that time were listening to Radio 2, and specifically this was Ken Bruce's show, and The Tracks of My Years like was one of his features where he kind of gets like a celebrity guest on to kind of talk about like sort of like some of like their favourite tracks. And we were driving down and like whoever was on picked the Smiths and There Is a Light That Never Goes Out, and I mean this was the first time I could ever heard it, and it really blew me away. Like you know it was one of these moments where you just kind of sit and you kind of like, wow, that is a great song. And like my mum's like your uncle's a big fan of like the Smiths and like that, like so like and like they'd actually I think like they'd given me a Smiths CD, which a CD maybe like a year or two before, which I kind of just ignored like a little bit, but then like after hearing like There Is a Light, I kind of soon kind of pinched all his old Smiths albums, like and then like kind of like revisited like that CD, and like yeah, it kind of I guess it's part of my DNA because it kind of led me down a path of kind of finding those, so immersing myself like in like 80s indie like music and like that, so like finding like sort of like semi obscure, certainly about like today's standards, like 80s like indie bands. And the other Smiths tracks are like like the other Smiths track like I would pick would be Frankly Mr. Shankly, again just for this mix of kind of like a very funny lyric, you know, he's not taking himself too seriously like on this track like Morrissey, and it's just that sense of you don't need to be serious all the time to be credible, like you know like you can still like have fun, like you know like and write really like witty lyrics like which are clever, but also like in the case there like of Frankly Mr. Shankly, quite funny but also quite like relatable like as well for someone who like by this point like was working like in like a job that I didn't particularly like enjoy. Okay, next up, pair number 11 now is Tears for Fears here. A bit of an oddball choice for me, but again one I think was quite formative and quite important part of like what I'd say is my musical DNA, like kind of like because I think I would struggle to probably put Tears for Fears again like a kind of like a conventional top 20 artists list, like for instance like if I was to do one, like but like I would say this was, I'm choosing this because this was among the first non-guitar music that I kind of enjoyed. Like, you know, like this album, The Hurting here, is very synth-driven, like, you know, like a lot of drum machines, very 80s kind of sound to it. And yeah, again, like I said, like this was like among like the first music like without guitars in it, which I really like enjoyed. Like, so I guess like the songs I'm picking both from The Hurting, I'm going for the title track, The Hurting, and Ideas as Opates, which is just again a really moving song. And like again, Roland sings it like incredibly. And I think, yeah, this album broke down a lot of musical barriers, like, for me. Again, it was one, like, my parents gave me, like, but again, I think it really got me into the likes of, like, New Order, like, Joy Division, like, that kind of stuff, like, kind of maybe slightly darker music. Okay, next one up I'm going for is Noel Gallagher here. Now, specifically Noel Gallagher, because unlike most people, I probably got into his solo stuff before I got into Oasis, and I would probably arguably say that I'm much more likely to play a Noel Gallagher album than I am like an Oasis album. So yeah, like my first kind of connection to him was through this Chasing Yesterday album here. Again, like I remember driving to work, and it must have been like around the time like this album came out, they were playing the ballad Off the Mighty Eye like on like the radio, and again that song just really blew me away. And I didn't make like the Oasis connection like at first. Of course you're familiar with like who like Oasis are, you know, like Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger, like the staple songs, like, but then like, yeah, like I just really enjoyed like his solo stuff, so things like Riverman and like, yeah, like Ballad of the Mighty Eye. But the other track, so I can go for that one, and then the other track which I'm picking is If I Had a Gun, which was, I remember playing this one when I used to go to like a guitar club. Again, I had no idea like who like Oasis was, but it was one of the songs that like the instructor like would bring in, like he'd give you like the chords and you just play it like as like a group. So like If I Had a Gun was like again a song which I like have like goes back a little way for me, and yeah, would be another one I would choose as part of my DNA. Okay, so next up now, pair number 13, I'm going for Tom Petty, a pair of songs from the Wildflowers album here. So Tom Petty in general was probably mostly a discovery through kind of making videos like on like on like YouTube here, and probably also through kind of like the Traveller Wilburys connection like as well, like getting into them through George Harrison, like, and like the ELO side of things, you know, like once like you're in there, you kind of like thinking, oh, who's this Tom Petty guy? Like, what else has he done? So I'm choosing two songs from Wildflowers here is because it kind of got me into, I guess, slightly maybe more acoustics based songs, you know, and kind of slightly more don't say folky, but kind of like, yeah, like kind of like a sort of rootsy kind of stripped back kind of sound, like which like you tend to get like on this album. So the two songs I'm going for, like actually like the first two songs like on this album, like Wildflowers and You Don't Know How It Feels, again just for their kind of like, yeah, slightly grungy kind of sound, especially like in like You Don't Know How It Feels, but then like also like Wildflowers, just the really nice acoustics and very tender like piano part like on it, like it's just like, yeah, like really good stuff. Okay, next up now, I'm going for David Bowie. So I must confess, I actually only really got into David Bowie after his death in the start of 2016. And yeah, like, and then I then shortly after that, like, I bought a hits compilation, tried to see what all the fuss was about, and again was really impressed and kind of like went from there. Probably the period of his career that has resonated most is this Berlin era here, like kind of like the late 70s stuff. And again, this probably opened a lot of doors for me in terms of like electronic music and kind of like sort of like slightly again like oddball sounds. So like the tracks like I'm going for would be Always Crashing in the Same Car. It's just such an atmospheric song. And then also Heroes as well, again, just for like that, like, again, yeah, you can't go wrong like with Heroes. So yeah, David Bowie would be my number 14. Okay, next up now, my 15th pair is two songs by The Cure here. So again, this in many ways opened me up to seeing that, I guess, what you would kind of call gothy music, you know, isn't actually that bad, like, after all. And there's a great world of great atmospheres and kind of songs and tracks which create more of a feeling than anything, you know, like it kind of songs which almost like take their time to build up and kind of are more about the sound than anything else, really. So the two tracks I could go for is one from this album, which is my favourite, and it was the first one I got into of theirs, and I would go for like A Night Like This. And then from Disintegration here, I'd go with Pictures of You. It's like about like 8 minutes, but it's just a glorious, glorious song, and like again, creates such like an atmosphere. So yeah, those are my 2 picks there by The Cure. Another essential artist for me, which I would consider part of my musical DNA, and probably gave me an appreciation for kind of, I guess, really good quality lyric writing, is like Elvis Costello. Like the 2 tracks I could go in for are like Welcome to the Working Week, which has to be one of my picks because it's just a really perfect example of the way that he kind of crams so much into so little space, you know, like it's kind of, it just kind of gets its message done with very, very, very quickly, and like I just really like how it kind of, yeah, like it's like a blink and you'll miss it sort of song. And then the other track I'd go for would be the Angels' Wanna Wear My Red Shoes, just for its very jangly guitars. It just sounds great, but then it's got this, again, going back to like James Griffith's kind of like happy sad kind of point, this song like in particular like has like that kind of like that has like that sort of feeling to it, like for me. So yeah, like Elvis Costello would be another pick. Okay, next up, we're getting a bit later now, maybe about 2017, 2018 sort of time now, and I got into Talking Heads here. So 2 tracks I'm going to go for is, my first one is Pulled Up from the 77 album here. Why I'm going for this is this probably introduced me to a lot of like what you call post-punk music, you know, kind of, it's a bit erratic, this one here, like quite like an eccentric kind of frontman like David Byrne was. But this one here, like, yeah, it's got this kind of angular kind of like sort of like not quite angry, but like more angsty kind of feel to it, like than I'd maybe been used to before. And then the other track I'm going for is the live version of A Girlfriend Is Better from Stop Making Sense, just as this kind of very mechanical kind of like a great kind of funk kind of groove to it, which again, it's quite long, it's quite repetitive like in some ways, like the groove, but again, it just kind of introduced me to that, being like, oh yeah, this is another kind of way, right way to do things, and like something like which I like enjoy. So yeah, those would be my 2 Talking Heads picks. Okay, another band, a bit like The Jam, like I talked about a bit earlier, which I discovered through a Top of the Pops like rerun. It's XTC, but like the 2 songs I can go in for are probably not their most poppy moments, I have to say, but I think are probably quite a vital part of like what I would term like my musical DNA. So yeah, like it was like I discovered them through Senses Working Overtime, which was the only song I knew of theirs for maybe about, say, 4 or 5 years, and then for some reason I think I then listened to Skylocking, was really impressed, and then this was the next album I went to, Apple Venus, and one of the tracks I'm going for is a River of Orchids, which is just a brilliant song. You know, it's quite experimental, this one, so there's a lot of different layers to this one. It kind of builds up kind of like sort of like very slowly with different elements added. You've got lots of different motifs in it, and it's just a very like inventive track, and something which is quite like unconventional, but really appealed to me. And the other one I'm going for is the closing track from The Big Express, Train Running Low on Soul Call, which is, I guess, a difficult song. Like at times it's very brash and very like in like your face, but again is a song which I just really like, and again it's got this kind of like this sort of like this suspense feel to it, and again this full-on production, which is just like, again, it's maybe a bit difficult, but like, yeah, like when it's on, like I just really like enjoy it, and like again get kind of taken away and really go on like a journey like with like this song. So yeah, those would be my 2 XTC picks. Okay, next artist now, my 19th pair is the one and only Paul Heaton, which I'm going for, like I'm bundling him just as Paul Heaton because I got into him his music like either like as the House Martins and the Beautiful South at like very similar kind of times. It was maybe like the House Martins like at first, but then the Beautiful South soon like entered like my like consciousness, and then like, yeah, like never like looked back. I think what appealed to me with Paul Heaton was, I think, one, his voice. You know, he's got a very soulful voice, and like the track I'm picking to kind of showcase that would be Let Love Speak Up Itself here, which I guess, yeah, gave me an appreciation of like just really talented vocalists. Like, you know, God, this guy can really sing, and like he kind of shows it very well like on like this song. And the other track I'd pick, again, again, is one which I wouldn't say is one of my favourite tracks of his. I've definitely overheard it, but I think I have to choose it. Like, it's Happy Hour here, simply because it is this kind of like this juxtaposition, like in it, like it is a happy song, like there was like it's a track which everyone knows and loves, gets people up dancing, like they all think, yeah, this is a great song, but lyrically it's slightly darker, basically kind of showcasing like, yeah, like this kind of, you've got like this first line about like saying like, it's happy hour again, I think I might be happy if I wasn't out with them, and it's kind of a comment on the kind of 80s kind of like yuppie sort of culture and kind of like general kind of office sexism, like, and like that sort of thing. So he, like, again, it's an example a bit like Paul Weller, where he's managing to make a point like in a song, but it doesn't sort of like stop people liking it, or it's kind of hidden like in plain sight kind of thing, like sort of like the meaning like off like the track. So that's what I quite like about Paul Heaton. Like, he's very universal, but he's also got a lot of like vibe when we actually like sort of delve down into him like as an artist. Like, his lyrics always have a lot of substance to them. Okay, next one now, number 20 is the Blue Nile here, which I'm going for, which again I'm choosing because again they very much gave me like an appreciation of sort of songs which kind of take their time, some more ambient kind of bass songs, and more songs which again create a mood, so a bit like The Cure, like I guess again like some ways, and I think what really just appealed, I think, was Paul Buchanan's vocals, which are just absolutely stunning. He's one of my favourite singers, and again he just knows how to put on like a great performance. So the two songs which I'm going for, one is from Hats, which is the Downtown Lights, will always be a favourite of mine. You've got this great pulsating beat on there, and just these shimmering, it's just got such a kind of shimmering quality to it, and it's such like evocative song, you know. You can really just imagine, yeah, driving downtown at night, like listening to this track. And then the other one I'm going for is From Rags to Riches, which has a very minimalistic arrangement to it, which again just creates such an atmosphere, you know, like he doesn't pile everything onto it. So again, I would say the Blue Nile gave me an appreciation for, yeah, slightly more minimal music, you know, like tracks which you don't have to pile everything like onto them, you know, like kind of space and music allows you to create like an atmosphere, like I think, like, so that's definitely what like the Blue Nile showcased quite well. Again, another one of my favourite bands now for my 21st pair here, so there's 2 more to go like after this, and I had to have them somewhere like on my list, but they have become a huge favourite of mine. Maybe got into them maybe say about 3 years ago, like I'd say. So the House of Love here, and I think this band should have been huge. You know, they were moderately successful. They had, I think, 1 top 20 hit, but they should have been as big as U2 for me, to be honest, because their songs have got such an anthemic and kind of, in a way, a feel-good kind of quality to them, but some very introspective lyrics on them like as well, and again it's this kind of happy sad like borderline like sort of like thing, and I would say that Babe Rainbow here is one of my all-time favourite albums now. If someone was to say top 5 albums, this would have to be in there for me, and like the 2 songs like I'm choosing both come from this. It's High in Your Face and Feel would be my 2 favourites. And again, I feel like with like the House of Love, they are in here because they still feel quite obscure, like, you know, they still feel like my band, like in like a way, like, you know, like in like a way, like I guess XTC probably was to like a lot of like their fans, maybe say 10-20 years ago, before they've kind of like sort of like, I guess I don't say taken off, but you know, like you see a lot of appreciation out there like for XTC, and they kind of, it's not reserved to like a select few number of people. I still feel like it's a bit like that, like with like the House of Love. So there is that kind of like that personal connection there for me, and like, yeah, that's probably why I would choose them to be part of my musical DNA. Okay, and the next up, again, a bit of an oddball choice, this one here. They're like a more modern act, but again, I'm choosing them precisely because of that. So it's Field Music, who I got into through like Rob Walker. Like, he like recommended them to me, so I was, yeah, like well into like making videos like by like this point, like on like YouTube. And they were probably one of the first modern bands I got into, kind of like myself, like really like all like through like a recommendation like of someone, like, and then kind of going away listening and thinking, damn, damn, like they're like really, really, really good. So it kind of made me kind of see the value, I guess, in kind of seeking out kind of like new music, like sort of thing, and like I guess like broke down a lot of barriers, like in like what like I like listen to. So the two tracks I'm going for, both kind of represent slightly different sides of like the band. So Disappointed is the first one, which is probably like their most poppy song. It's the track which got me into them, and it's just and like it's just a great song. And then the other track would be Trouble at the Lights, which has this more kind of longer kind of almost more proggy piece. So it kind of it's like like a great example of like a band still making music, which I guess kind of throws back a little bit to kind of like the 70s, like an 80s, like in like a lot of ways. So yeah, Field Music would be my number 22 choice. Okay, and now my final pair of songs come from Prefab Sprout here. So I've probably been aware of Prefab Sprout probably for a similar amount of time I've been aware of things like the Smiths, but it always took me ages to get into them because their music is quite difficult. You know, like Paddy McAloon is a quite erratic, quite eccentric songwriter, but you know, maybe like a year or two ago, something just really clicked like with like Prefab Sprout for me, and again it gave me appreciation of kind of pop with a oddball twist. So it reminds me quite a bit of like 10cc, like in like a lot of ways. I mean, like his songwriting, particularly like on this album Swoon, is just all over the place, covering subjects such as chess finalists, basketball, and whiskey priests. And he's kind of like these very abstract lyrics are often teamed with songs with odd time signatures and sort of crazy like sort of like chords to them like as well. Really, I guess gave me an appreciation of like the craft like of songwriting, and I guess appreciating kind of clever songwriters and sort of like inventive songwriters. So the two tracks I'm going for would be one from Swoon, which is I Never Play Basketball Now, if only for like its introduction, like, you know, like with so many chords like packed in, and it's just again a great example of just slightly like off the wall kind of songwriting. And then the other one from Steve McQueen would be Bonnie, which is probably my favourite Prefab Sprout song. It's just a very tender song, very quite a gentle song like in some ways, but it's just so sophisticated like as well in terms of its sound, and then just like again the way he sings it is just incredible. So Prefab Sprout for me would be my last pair there. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed that. So like a little insight there into my kind of musical DNA, kind of 25 seminal artists who've kind of like inspired me and kind of informed like my like music taste. So I will leave a link to Dave's original video in the description, as well as James Griffith's first response video, like of like many like which I think he's planning to do. So no, hope you have enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.